Hi there, friends. Thank you for pressing play on today's podcast. I've got Dr. Jason Johnson joining me today to talk about his recent trip to South Africa and all of everything that is in the news. A great conversation with Jason, and that is coming right up for you because I spent much of yesterday working on the school board campaign and door knocking and phone banking and commiserating with my fellow volunteers. And guess what? We won. That's right. John Maltby, congratulations for getting reelected to the school board, even though most of us volunteers didn't do nearly as much phone banking, door knocking, and volunteering as we should have and probably could have. But you did it. We did it. And we're very excited that we got a win here locally in Clarkstown, New York. And our candidate won way more than any other candidate. So we got a lot of votes, and it's a good feeling, and it's a good sign, and we're really happy about that. I woke up to a broken internet, which prevented me from doing the entire news segment. So womp womp. I am sorry that I don't have that for you this morning, because there's a ton in the news to talk about from the last 24 hours. But let's jump right to my conversation with Jason Johnson, where I cover much of that in the latter half of our conversation. We talked a lot about his trip to South Africa in the first part of the conversation, which is very important and relevant. Jason is now a big YouTube star. Go look him up there. Go see him on MSNBC, where he will be spending a lot of time this week, and follow him on social media everywhere. Jason and I go way back to our CNN days. He's a good friend of mine, good friend of the show, and I always am happy when he joins me here. So let's do it right now with Dr. Jason Johnson.
Good morning.
Look at you. You're a YouTube star now.
I am. And you know what? I can attribute a lot of that to Pete Dominick and him telling me to get up off my butt and think about the future. Pete Dominick and Roland Martin and all the other great and wonderful people in the industry who are like, hey, there's this whole thing called YouTube, and you can put your YouTube together. And I am still learning. I'm still learning like the values, not the values, but I'm still learning about like production and stuff like that and getting things together. But just being able to do commentary and not have the restraints of the other places that I'm on. We hit 1 million views in the first 2 weeks, which was like awesome for something that I just started. And yeah.
I like it a lot. I have always enjoyed your commentary, which is obviously why I always love to talk to you because of it. But I think a lot of times you're on a panel and you get interrupted. A lot of times you're anchoring, and so you're hosting and sometimes asking people questions that I want to know what you think about. I'd rather have you be answering them. I think people like you and a lot of others who I could name and who I have on the show should be doing 7, 10, 12, 15-minute commentaries on things. You think them out, you write them out if you want, whatever, and you make these points. I love it for YouTube. I love it for you. I just got done watching your entire 2-camera video about your trip to South Africa. I learned a lot. I enjoyed it, and I want to talk with you about it.
Yeah. I got back a week ago, an hour ago. Cape Town was amazing. And I say this up front because this is like super important for people like internationally understand this. For those in the international audience of Stand Up with Pete or those who have traveled internationally, I went to Cape Town. So I can only speak, that's saying I went to America and you went to Miami or Denver or LA. I was in Johannesburg back in 2007. So I still haven't been to Durban. There's obviously, it's a huge country. And then there's parts that I couldn't go. There's like the town Oriana that doesn't allow black people in it still. So there were parts of South Africa I didn't go to, but I was in Cape Town for almost 12 days.
So it doesn't mean you're an expert on South Africa because you've only visited one part, but you still have more credibility than most of us who haven't been and are just learning about it now. And it depends where you go to learn. As always, that's probably an important lesson. But a general understanding of the history of South Africa is relevant and important if you want to think about it. And you should be thinking about it because it's in the news. But more importantly, this issue around the recent last 20 years in South Africa and the claim of white genocide, which is a myth. It's a huge myth. It's an absurd claim. It does an injustice to the word genocide, but it's also a primary example of propaganda and disinformation, Jason. And most people don't know it because the president of the United States is using the phrase, which gives it a lot of credibility, unfortunately.
Yeah, Pete, one of the craziest things, and I tell people this all the time because when I was there in 2007, like I was doing political work specifically, right? So I've always paid attention to the country. I've taught about South Africa and everything else like that. The main short of it for people who don't know, so you had apartheid, which was about 80 years. And apartheid was basically, and I want to be very clear about this, this is not theory, right? Apartheid was based on Jim Crow South. Like I learned it from watching you, if you go back to the old drugs commercials. Like literally the South Africans who were the English who came and beat up the Dutch. And so the Afrikaners are made up of sort of Dutch English immigrants. The Black Africans who are there, you've got like up to 15 to 120 different languages, depending on what you count, including the Zulu, the San, the Xhosa, et cetera, et cetera. And the white folks managed to take over the country through a combination of more advanced technology, meaning having guns and cannons and Gatling guns. And then two, like most countries around the world, they're crammed into being one nation when the reality is it's actually a bunch of different groups of people, right? If somebody wanted to take over the United States and just wanted to go state by state, that's a lot easier than if you take over the whole country at once, right? And that's what the sort of white folks were able to do. And then once they did that, they took all the Black people, which is like 70% of the population of the country, and put them on about 5% of the arable land. So for all the land in South Africa that you can actually farm on, which is not, it depends on what part of the country you're in, they squeezed all the Black people onto the parts that you really couldn't farm, only gave them some farmland. They called it apartheid. They held that system for 70 or 80 years. It ended in 1990. In 1994, you had Nelson Mandela, who had been in jail for 40 years. As the former head of the ANC, he becomes president. So for the last 30 years, they have had a multicultural democracy. Is it great in all ways? No. They have issues with all the things that happen when you have a multicultural democracy, not to mention the fact that white people still own almost everything, and the government has had some real challenges redistributing wealth. But the white folks who are leaving are liars. And basically, they're just racist white folks who didn't want to live in a country where you have Black presidents.
White genocide is a phrase. Those two words are words I heard all the way back at my Sirius XM days. Some guy used it as his handle who would troll me. And there's a strong belief in this idea, not only in South Africa, but elsewhere. And I think it's worth mentioning as I was doing some research here about it. I guess I didn't realize how many billionaires that are very close to Donald Trump are also South African. You've got Peter Thiel, David Sachs, Elon Musk, and some dude named Roloff, I think it is. And that's where this is where who put the bug in his ear. There's no doubt, although maybe he learned it at some other point, but he's doing their bidding, obviously. And at the same time, he's throwing out Black and brown actual refugees that qualify and have been vetted to come to America or were already here. What do you think about that juxtaposition that we saw last week?
None of it's surprising, right? Like Trump is a white nationalist, and Thiel and Elon Musk, they call them the PayPal mafia. A lot of these guys made their money off of PayPal. And what they want to do, this is a funny thing to understand about comparing the two countries. And again, like I was actually like my master's work is in comparative politics. So if you look at South Africa today, right, 70-something% of the country is like Black South Africans. About 10 maybe percent is like Afrikaners, like white people in South Africa. And then the rest 15% or so is what they call colored people. So anybody who's not Black. So people who are biracial, Indian, Samoan, blah, 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 everybody else, every other sort of ethnic group. It's almost the reverse of the United States. The United States is like 70% white, right? 10% Black, about 15% Hispanic, 8% Asian, blah, blah, blah. So I say that to point out that all the things that you see Elon Musk getting away with, or Elon, which is what I heard them call him down there, he couldn't do them in South Africa. Even though he's the richest man in the world, and even though his money would certainly take him much further down there than he could get here, right? He could not do what he is doing in South Africa because they know that his primary motivation is racial. And it says something about America and our demographics that you can get away with this stuff here, but you couldn't get away with it in a country that's much poorer.
Yeah, really well said. Why did you go to South Africa? And tell me a little bit more about your trip.
So it was a combination of factors. Shout out to my friends Eric Dean Staten. Shout out to my friend Malcolm Barrett, Michael Trucco, Cynthia McWilliams. Dennis Haysbert, who I got to meet down there, Pearl Thusi. I was down there in part because I have some really good friends who are filming a show called Average Joe. And it was on BET Plus, and then it went to Netflix. It was top 10 on Netflix. It stars Dion Cole. And basically it's like a dark crime comedy. Think of a mixture between Ozark and maybe The Sopranos. And it's a really good show. Like I objectively really enjoyed the show. So like a lot of streamers, it takes forever to get from season 1 to season 2. BET and Netflix decided, we want to do season 2 in Cape Town, South Africa. So I had friends down there who have been filming since January. So it's like, might be cool to go visit. I'll think about it. I got my boys down there. And then the first week of March, I was talking to another colleague of mine, great comic writer, creator, Hannibal Taboo, and he and I were having lunch. He was helping with my graphic novel, and he mentions, there's a Comic-Con in Africa. And I said, really? He's, yeah, there's Cape Town Comic-Con. And I was like, no way. And I was like, all right, so Comic-Con Africa is the same as the last week of filming for my friends on a TV show. I got to go. So I got my ticket and headed out and absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed Cape Town, South Africa. I will tell people.
Yeah, you're hanging out with a bunch of fucking celebrities. You're glossing over the fact that it wasn't like you knew a person there. You weren't backpacking and staying at hostels.
No, I haven't done that. Period.
Sounds a bit like an aristocratic experience to me, Jason.
No, it was really, look, I had a very nice apartment when I was there. The exchange rate is really good. Look, I will tell you this, and this ain't no flex. This is just where I happen to be in my life, and I've had this attitude for a very long time. Yeah, so Dennis is on the show, right? And so I got a chance to meet him, which was amazing. Like, I will put that up there. You take a look at a picture of Dennis Haysbert, right? And I assume everybody on this kind of knows who that is. Like, on the scale of amazing black actors to meet, first off, this brother's 70 years old. And you remember those pictures that came out of Ernie Hudson a couple months ago from Ghostbusters and Oz, and how Ernie Hudson's 70-something years old and the dude is ripped? And you're like, how does this happen? Dennis Haysbert is amazing. Like, the guy looks amazing for 70-something years old. And being able to have dinner, we were all out at dinner, and being able to have dinner with the Good Hands with Allstate guy and just hear that voice, like, as you're saying.
It must be weird being him, having such a famous voice and face, if you don't know who he is. He was also the president in that Sirius 24, which I watched. I watched that whole almost terrible television show, almost every episode. So anyway, there you were in South Africa with all these big deal people. Tell me about just the culture or the country or what you learned. I'm obviously interested in the racial history and how black folks see Americans, much less white Americans or Trump or anything else. That's always interesting to me when you're traveling.
So every Monday is Beat a White Person Day, and it's just been ensconced in a new constitution.
Still.
Yeah. So every black person in the country is given a bat, and you chase white people down the street like the Irish. So it's
does it pay, and who books it?
It's just by law, right? So all the white people are required to go out and they stand in the street. You get to pick one. And you get to symbolically. Now, look, apparently in the 90s, it was like an all-day affair. Now on Mondays,
it's not a bat. It's more of a paddle. It's more like a cricket paddle, if you're being honest.
It really is. Really super simple. You get them coffee now. You talk. You're like, hey, good morning. And then it's simple. That's how they keep the races getting along in Cape Town.
I don't know if they're doing a very good job, because the statistics I read are that the white folks are doing pretty well when it comes to wealth in that country. It doesn't seem to be effective, this Beat a White Person Day that you just made up.
I think it makes them feel a little bit better about their ill-gotten apartheid gains and gives black people some catharsis.
Actually a narrative from your graphic novel by any chance?
It is. Terrible allergies.
A White Person Day.
Yes, it's called Mondays, Beat a White Person Day. So this is what I can say racially about what I experienced, which was different than Cape Town and Johannesburg almost 20 years ago. One, Cape Town is probably one of the whiter cities. Like, you go to Johannesburg, is like a combination, because it's like landlocked and everything else like that. Johannesburg is closer to like Atlanta or New York. It's way more black and way more sort of big, tall city urban. Cape Town is a lot more white, a lot more colored. It is honestly one of the most beautiful ecosystems I have ever been in. The city is a combination of, and it's the beginning of winter, like fall, winter there. Like, it's bright every day, so you still like it, but it's not muggy or hot. It's just direct sun. You're in this beautiful bowl of the mountains, right? It feels like you're right outside of Denver, Colorado, but they've got a lot of hills, so it reminds you of LA. There's sea lions right on the wharf. My apartment was near the wharf. I drove about an hour south, and they have a penguin colony. The only sort of non-South Pole penguin colony there. So you have these African penguins. Pete, I did not know this until I was there. Did you know that penguins make noise? I didn't know that.
I'm not sure if I think maybe I knew that. They were birds.
Very loud, super loud. They're nicknamed the jackass penguins because they sound like braying donkeys. They're like loud. But as far as the people go, I didn't have a ton of interactions other than the casual places you go and meet people and talk to folks. One, people recognize you're an American, so how you're being treated as an American is probably different than how you're being treated as somebody who's
right. Yep, good of you to recognize that. Yeah.
Also, most people when I'm abroad think I'm Nigerian anyway, so that also brings a different kind of thing. But I found the people to be generally nice, generally friendly. The white people there didn't give me any weirder looks than they do in certain parts of the DC metro area. Like you don't see, like I went to the club district. There's a club called Longstreet, and then there's this other spot. I went to this pool hall. Amongst your Gen Zs, you see fairly multicultural crowds of people. Like when I was like hanging out in one of the club districts, it doesn't look much different than any other downtown in any major metropolitan area. You got young people of all kinds drinking, doing hookah, blah, blah, blah. Is it totally integrated? No, it's not totally integrated anywhere. But it's like you walk into this bar and there's a record scratch because you're the only black person there. I didn't have that experience.
Have you ever had that experience?
Oh, I have. I have several. I had that experience in Ohio. I remember walking into a restaurant once because I was hungry right after I had moved to Hiram, and I walked in, and these, like, literally, I think they bought a record player, got a brand new album, and then scratched it just to make the point of how discomforted they were by me actually showing up. It was on my way out to Hiram, Ohio, which is where I used to teach. I've been some places where white folks were not happy I was there. I've been to some stores where white people weren't happy I was there.
Before I let you go, I got to ask you some more about the news. It's great to see Jason Johnson here, as always. I'm always excited to talk to you. But I just want to get your take on the president's trip to the Middle East and the Arab world and the big grift that he seems to be conducting.
I loathe this phrase, so I'm not going to use the I'm old enough, blah, blah, blah. But what I will say is this, which is fascinating to me from just a historical political standpoint. For most of my life and most of your life, Pete, there were two regions, ethnic groups or whatever, that the Republicans and the right clobbered Democrats and the left on. For most of my life, it was like, you're soft on Russia, you're soft on Russia, you're soft on the commies, you're soft on Russia. And then that was in the 90s when they weren't commies anymore. It was like, you're soft on Russia. Yeah. And you're soft on the Middle East. You're soft on these Arabs and they're terrorists and blah, blah, blah.
Or they would also always just make them out to be a great threat, which argue whether or not they were, but go ahead.
So it's fascinating to me to see how basically in the last 15 years, the Republicans and the right in America have done a complete 180 shift where now Russia is where we want to be. Right? Russia is the greatest place in the world. The Russians are no threat. Ukraine are a bunch of Nazis. Vladimir Putin is great. And now literally the president's, I don't care about human rights records. I don't care if, you support terrorist organizations that kill journalists in any other country that's killing journalists who are trying to report on what's actually happening. It's fascinating to see them do a complete 180 on this, and it's fine. And Trump going to the Middle East and getting this jet, which is hilarious to me because it's not just that it's such obvious grift, right? It's not just that it's corrupt, but dude, I'm sure you've seen the story about what the deal is with this jet and the Qataris. You see this?
Yeah, I've been reading it pretty closely.
It's like they couldn't get rid of the damn thing. Like, they didn't want the jet. They were tired of spending the money for maintenance. So they're like, here's a sucker who will take my crappy ass 2004 Honda Civic, okay, that I got from Pimp My Ride as a gift. It's been sitting in my garage, and they gave it to us. Now our taxes are going to pay for it.
The other reporting is that Trump wanted that it was taking too long for a new Air Force One. It was way behind schedule, and Trump wants a plane now. And so he looked around. So it wasn't the Qataris necessarily coming to him and dropping it off at an airport nearby where he lives. And, hey, you might want to come over and tour this, as much as him going, who in the world has a plane that we could retrofit without knowing that would take $1 billion and 4 years to retrofit a Qatari jet, which could be a Trojan horse of sorts. I just got to ask you before you leave about what happened last night. Charges have been filed. I don't think she's been arrested yet. I'm confused as to the status of it. But Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, whose name I'm not sure I knew. She was recently elected in 24. Yeah. But I feel like everybody's going to know the name LaMonica McIver pretty soon, this congresswoman who they're charging her with apparently somehow assaulting a police officer. She herself looks like it was insulted if you see the video. But what do you make of this? Because my feeling is this is going to backfire. Arresting a congresswoman, arresting a black congresswoman is going to backfire, just like many of the other things that they have done that created a real outcry. But they really are crossing, I believe, an important and terrible Rubicon by arresting a black congresswoman. What do you think about this?
I don't think it's going to change anything. I don't think it's going to change anything at all. You're going to have people who complain. You'll have people get angry. You may have some scant protests here and there, but I don't think this is a line being crossed. They have been crossing lines since before Trump got back into office. Sure. And the response to these things is always, is there going to be public mass resistance? I don't know if the public is in the mood for public mass resistance right now. And I don't know if black people are in the mood for public mass resistance right now. That's step one. Step two, and this is the even sadder part, is I don't know that the Democrats are going to do anything, not collectively. They haven't before. They don't have the actual voting power to do much. And you still got people like Cory Booker voting for the damn Jared Kushner's dad to be ambassador to France. It's not like you're seeing much resistance on the part of the party. So I don't know that it's going to end up making that much of a difference. I will say this, though. It is amazing to me. And I always take these things back to the former administration that I will never forgive for putting us in the position that we're in now. I don't have a problem with arresting members of Congress if they're actually accused or there's a credible reason to believe that they've committed a crime. And somehow we managed to not do that in 4 effing years after January 6th. There's plenty of members of Congress who probably should have been arrested. So this arrest, while it's part of this authoritarian regime's overall activity, I don't know. And I'm not saying this shouldn't happen. Obviously, there should be massive uproar. I don't think there's no heroes coming.
You don't think black and brown women, much less Democrats in the House, are going to collectively demand some different kind of action, do whatever possibly can be done, that Hakeem Jeffries is going to allow this to happen? You don't think this is...
He's going to complain about it and send a strongly worded letter. Unless they're managed to do a sit-in and this is what authoritarians do. It's not the next step. They've already been arresting judges. They arrested a judge, in Wisconsin, because they claimed that she interfered with ICE activities because she told somebody to go out a back door. This is what this regime does. So
here's one way to look at it, and you can tell me if you think this is bullshit, and then I'll let you go. Authoritarian regimes, certainly this one, is constantly running stress tests. Can we get away with this? Much of it they are clearly getting away with. Some of it they are not getting away with as much. I think the courts have stepped in, and if you watch one particular case or another, I think it does change their actions to some extent, specifically if this judge, in fact, is prosecuted successfully. I think they'll do more of this to judges. But if not, and if the pushback is strong enough, and it would seem to be right now, then maybe they don't do this. Maybe they don't disappear people who wrote an essay or an op-ed they don't like as a result of what has happened. They test the boundaries. They stress test. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. And that's how we know what's working and what's not in terms of public action, outcry, protest. Thoughts?
I would love to believe that there will be a massive uproar and outcry and that this will be a line. This is crossing a Rubicon that they can't, but I haven't seen it. And I'm not inclined to believe that the organized political parties that are supposed to be in opposition will do much about it. I'd be impressed if they did, but I don't see that right now. I see a country that for the most part is frustrated and angry and standing up in some respects, but not at enough of a massive scale to stop people who are not driven by electoral concerns anymore. These people don't care. They're authoritarian, so they're not worried about it. It's like people talk about the economy. Oh, this is going to hurt Trump in the midterms. These people are not thinking about midterms. They don't think that they're going to rig votes. They don't care anymore. So, again, the fact that she's a black woman, I will tell you, there are a lot of different feelings in the black community as a whole about the value of big public protesting. It doesn't mean people aren't doing things. People are active. People are working. They are organizing and strategizing, whatever. But massive public in the streets protests, which many people have concluded would simply make black people an easy strategic target for an authoritarian regime, is usually the best way to get administrations to change their behavior. And black folks don't appear en masse to be inclined to do that right now. So if a bunch of white folks are going to get out there and march for a black woman member of Congress who's been arrested, again, as part of some authoritarian regime crackdown on constitutionally illegal disappearings of people, then that would be amazing to see. I'm not going to hold my breath for it.
You got to go?
I don't have to, not at this exact moment.
One more question then, at least. I just want to know. Sometimes you're Batman. It just disappears. What are your thoughts on...
When you turn, I will be gone. And then you're going to be like, damn. And it's like... I
hope there's a puff of smoke.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts first on the book being written about Joe Biden by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson of Axios? And then what are your thoughts about Joe Biden's cancer announcement yesterday?
This was that 90s song, Tell Me All Your Thoughts on God. So here's the thing about Tapper's book, and I'm going to be honest. I think people need to separate what their feelings are about Jake Tapper and what he has and has not done and how he has and has not stood for democracy over the last 6 or 7 years from the book. I haven't read it because I think these political tell-alls are boring to the degree that it reinforces what we already started to know, which is that there were numerous people in the administration who were aware that Joe Biden possibly physically and cognitively was not going to be capable of running the kind of campaign that the American people need in order to provide the resistance or the bulwark to Donald Trump. Anybody who was involved with that, I will never forgive. They are the reason we're in this position. If you saw how this man was doing, if you saw the kind of, it's like what we saw with McConnell. If it looks like he's had multiple strokes on camera on the podium. If you ever saw Joe Biden do what he did in that debate with Donald Trump, just not lose track of his thoughts, like literally freeze for 30-something seconds, just not be able to speak, move, or function. If you saw anything like that while you were in the White House, how dare you? The arrogance, the audacity, the despicable short-sightedness to think that you were still going to try and push him out to run for president again when you knew the man was not physically capable. So to the degree that Jake Tapper's book names more names of people who were involved in that process, fine, so be it. I'm still mad that Joe Biden and his family chose to run again when he had every opportunity after the success of the 2022 midterms to do a State of the Union address in early 2023 and say to the world, hey, everybody, I'm just reminding you, I said I'm going to be a transitional president. I will only serve one term. I will not be running again in 2024. And I want to add, and he should have had this conversation with her, I picked Kamala Harris as my vice president. I believe in her. However, I think in my role as a transitional president, I'm going to advise that the Democratic Party and the American people choose. Just because I chose her as my vice president does not necessarily mean that's what the public wants. And I encourage you all to have a primary. Had he done that, we might not be where we are today. That is the frame in which, am I sad? Of course I'm sad that anybody has cancer. That's not a thing. I'm like, who wouldn't be sad that somebody has cancer? But it doesn't change all of the other things that the Bidens have subjected America to because of their short-sightedness and arrogance.
Now, I don't agree with the view or your view. I don't even agree. I don't even like you. I like your mom.
Everybody does. Everybody likes my mom.
We're such good Facebook friends and real life friends. The view, I fully agree with most of what you said. In terms of, I can't forgive Joe Biden for running again, but I don't like the view of blaming Biden and not the people who voted for Donald Trump, not Kamala or her campaign or Joe Biden, but I want to blame the people who voted for Donald Trump more than Joe Biden. I would have voted for a jar of measles or a fictional character, and the Biden administration got more done than any administration in our entire lives. They actually did really good work. He definitely should not have run again. Absolutely agree with all your opinions, but I want to blame the Trump voters, not Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. Go ahead.
I don't, because we already knew what they were. And there's a new report actually that I just got this morning that's a new sort of breakdown analytically of what happened in 2024, which I can't wait to read later on this afternoon. Oh. Look, the fact of the matter is it's by Catalyst. And it's what I expected, which is Donald Trump he's the white Obama. He has a very good job. He does a very good job with surge voters, meaning less politically engaged. It's not necessarily educated. Less politically engaged, less politically interested young people, especially young men of all races who are usually much more inclined to vote Democrat, he is able to bring them out. But they don't come out for anybody else. They're just voters for him.
That's the only comparison you're making to Obama. I don't love he's the white Obama. You're talking about the constituency or the group of people, voters that come out for him. The only other people they did that for were Barack Obama. Other than that, the comparison.
Obama did well with that same group of people. And mind you, it was 16, 17 years ago. Young men between the ages of 18 and 25 who don't really care about politics, blah, blah, blah. But they came out for this guy that they liked and were politically disconnected afterwards. Didn't really care, blah, 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 blah. That's what he does well with. But I say all that to say everybody who loved this country, flawed as it may have been, and everybody who was a Democrat or, again, cared about functional sovereignty and democracy, they knew what the Republicans were. I don't blame the scorpion for being the scorpion, but I do blame the people for telling the frog, I think this time the scorpion won't bite you in the back. No, it will. I blame all the idiotic Democrats who sat back there and allowed Joe Biden to do this. I blame Biden's own people for stabbing Kamala in the back throughout 2023 and leaking terrible stories about her so that she couldn't appear to be a functional successor to him if that time ever came about. I blame all the campaign consultants who are more concerned with their own legacies and people's feelings than they were with the future of this country. I'm mad at those people because they had a chance to do something. I already know that you had 40-something% of the country that was going to vote for Donald Trump. I already know that Brian Kemp and Ron DeSantis were going to cheat. We know that stuff is baked into the cake. What are you going to do in the face of evil? And these people didn't just blink. They were looking at their damn Indeed resumes rather than fighting the evil that was in front of them.
Wow. Okay. You've said a lot. Boldly. You said it with passion. You said it with a lot of, I feel, integrity behind it. And I think you're going to get a lot of folks listening and watching that fully agree with you.
And a lot who will disagree. Look, I've been saying this for a while, and folks get mad. And they're like, no. And again, they say often what you say. It's like, I blame the Republicans. That's fine. I don't, but you know who they are. So why not focus on the people who actually could have done something one way or another? Like, I can't, if I get pulled over by the cops, right? I know it's not fair. I know it's unreasonable. I know cops are racist. I can also say, hey, Jason, maybe you should have been driving down the street, blasting fuck the police and waving liquor out the window. If you weren't going to share. And when the cop comes to the car and I won't give him a sip and I won't puff past to him, then I was probably going to get in some kind of trouble. There's a way in which we can recognize. This is amazing imagery, isn't it? There's ways in which we can recognize fundamental evil, and we can also recognize those who failed at the job to keep us from driving into the ditch.
Been way too long since we talked. You can see more and subscribe to Jason's fast-growing YouTube channel, Dr. Jason Johnson, drjasonjohnson.com. You are great. It is great. Tell your mom I said hi and that you joined me and that it went really well.
Yes, and so tonight, just a heads up, on Tuesday night, I will be on MSNBC on the weeknight show. You got to call me about that, Pete. We can talk about that off air. I'm going to be on the weeknight show on MSNBC tonight, Tuesday. On Thursday night, the 22nd, I'm sitting in for Lawrence O'Donnell. And on Friday night, I will be a guest on The Beat with Ari Melber at 6 p.m. So if you're tuning in, please do tune in. I will be on all those times.
Love it. Love me some Jason Johnson anywhere we can get it. And I appreciate you bringing it here today. Thank you, sir.
Cool. Thanks, man. Give me a call.
Yep. Yeah, there he goes. Dr. Jason Johnson. Always great to talk with him. Sorry I did not have the normal opening news segment. I will be back with that, of course, tomorrow. But I appreciate you joining me today. I hope to see you at tomorrow night's Hangout. And I hope that you have a great day. Thanks so much for checking in with me, and check us out on the Discord platform, youtube.com/standup, to see when I'm going to go live today and almost every day lately. It's working. I think it's working. All right, that's it. That's all. John Carroll, go get his new album right now with this song on it. Thanks, John. Love y'all. Talk to you later.
Off of your fence, even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense, and you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town, just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down, boy, you better stand up.